Welcome to the Paper Trail, where we follow the journey, my journey, through the world of a CEO of a mortgage note fund. I'm Chris 70, and after years of buying, managing, and selling notes with 70 investments, I'm here to share the real stories behind the deals. What went right, what went wrong, and what I wish I knew earlier. From non-performing loans to seller financing to private lending, this show is about more than strategies, about growing your business, learning to follow the paper trail, and doing the due diligence that separates the pros from the rest. Now, let's hit the trail running. So I just recorded an episode with Nathan Turner of Earnest Investing and host of the Diversified Mortgage Expo, which is going to be May 2nd and 3rd down in Nashville, but people should get there on May 1st to participate in the axe throwing competition. What I loved about this conversation was, it wasn't only about the conference, it was, how to focus on what to learn, who should attend, who should you meet, not only at conferences, but just how to navigate the note investing world professionally. And that's something, because we are a very tight-knit community, it's important for people to understand. We're not as much in competition as you see other types of real estate investors. We're more focused on building our company, but building it through partnerships, mentorships, and selecting the right vendors. So hope you enjoy this episode with Nathan, who has been in the note space for over 15 years. And I think this will be a great episode for people to further their note investing career. And make sure to check out the Diversified Mortgage Expo early next month. Today, I am here with Nathan Turner of Earnest Investing, as well as the host of the Diversified Mortgage Expo. Nathan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. Good to be here.
Yes, we were just chatting before hitting the record button on what we're seeing in the economy, what's going on, and Nathan, being up in Canada, I'm sure has his own opinion that we're not going to dive into all of that today. What we want to dive into is more about Nathan's background, but also educate investors on the DME conference that is coming up very soon, and talk about why note investors should attend conferences, what to look for and get out of these conferences, and then even talk about some of the next steps. As Nathan and I have been to many conferences, and each one is unique and different from what you can get out of it. But yeah, we'll talk all about that. But first, Nathan, why don't you tell people a little bit about your background in regards to how you stumbled upon or got into note investing?
Yeah, and that's the right word for it. I mean, and that's probably most note investors. You just kind of fell into it. Not a lot of people thought, "Hey, I know, I'll go search this out." No, most people fall into it, and I did too. So I was doing fix and flip real estate in Canada, and I got stuck with one property at the end of that, just as we were coming up in about 2008, 2009. One property I couldn't sell, so I rented it because that's what you do with real estate, right? If you can't sell it, you rent it. And I figured out very quickly that the monthly cash flow was nice, but I didn't like anything else about being a landlord. Like it was hard work. It was across the country, so I didn't have very much control. I felt like my property manager was awful, and it was just not a fun experience. I didn't enjoy that whole idea of it. It was not a nice neighborhood. Like, so there's a lot of things going against me, and you learn as you go, and I know how that goes, but I didn't know. And so I got stuck with this one house, and I'm like, this is garbage. I don't know why people do this landlord thing. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
And then it was
because it's not as lucrative as HGTV makes it out to be.
no, on TV, it looked a whole lot easier and better and much more profitable. And like I say, like we did okay, but certainly not worth the effort, as far as I could tell. And then so kind of fast forward a little bit, we eventually sold the house as the market kind of picked up a little bit again. And so I was free of that. And I thought, well, I like real estate, but I don't know about this landlording thing. And it was shortly after then, my old partner, Corey, he contacted me and said, "Hey, these guys out of California, they have all these properties in the Midwest. They don't know what to do with this stuff, so they want us to come on board and just kind of help figure it out. And again, this was like 2008, 2009, when nothing was going well. And these guys had bought this portfolio in 2007 at the height of the market. It was supposed to be a flip. They were supposed to flip it out to a different outfit, and the deal fell through. And now all of a sudden they're stuck with all these properties. So Corey and I, we thought we'd invented seller financing. We were like, brilliant idea. We'll sell these houses on terms, carry back notes. And the thinking was, landlording is terrible. So how do we get monthly payments out of this without having to take care of the house? That was the
Yeah.
motivation.
Yeah.
So kind of stumbled into this note thing. So, the thinking again is the person in the house, they're the ones responsible for taking care of it. If something breaks, they got to fix it. Banks don't do that kind of thing. And just kind of figuring out as we went along. Figured out there was such thing as a note investing world. I went to my first note investing conference. It was noteworthy back in 2009. And I was blown away at just that there's a community, people do this, it's a real business. And that was the introduction for me. So I just went from there. Non-performing for a long time. Now we're doing performing with the fund, and it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had coffee this morning with a gentleman who is more on like the sales side for a law firm that's, works a lot in the raising capital side of things. And when I was explaining to him what we did, it caught him off guard because, again, people heard of lending funds or, a lot of the private lending and stuff like that. But when
Yeah.
people mention non-performing loans on, single family,
Yeah.
everyone always says, I don't know anybody that does that. Like, you can do that. And
Yeah.
that's what happened to me. I was in real estate for 20 years and then it stumbled upon note investing. And the way I stumbled upon it was I was looking up tax liens at first. I'm like, wow, this is like watching paint dry. And there was no
Yeah.
strategy on tax liens. And then on Bigger Pockets, the group of tax liens was tied to note investing. I'm like, what's this note investing thing? And I was pissed, the first time I found out about, like, who's hiding this from me? But you're right. Most people who get into this are disgruntled fix and flippers. I
Yeah.
like to call us goats. We're just getting old and tired of owning real estate,
Yeah.
is where most of us come through. But yeah, and over the years, you've done very well. And I know several years ago, you decided to, provide additional education content for people with the Diversified Mortgage Expo, we'll say DME for short, and it's heading
Yeah.
up now on its 10th anniversary. So
Yeah.
congratulations. I know you weren't running it all those 10 years, but still
Right.
to keep up the tradition, why don't
Yeah.
dive a little bit into that?
Yeah. It was, again, stumbled into the people that you talk to, the connections you make. So it was Kimberly Banks Fawcett and Liz Broomer Smith that had it before
Yep.
me.
Mhm.
Wonderful ladies. They're fantastic. Kim, bless her heart, I love her to death. And she just said, I'm not for the stage. And I thought, you're nuts because you're awesome, but okay, fine.
Yep. Mhm.
And Liz, her and her husband at the time, they're living in an RV and traveling all over the world and doing all kinds of things. They're still doing that.
Yep.
And she says, I don't think it really makes sense with my lifestyle. I'm like, yeah, I think you're right. I don't think it makes
Yeah.
sense for what you're doing either. So yeah, they approached and said, hey, are you interested in taking this over? My immediate answer is yes. And like, oh, by the way, how does it work? How much does it cost? Uh, Those were all total secondary questions.
Yeah.
And the reason is because from 2009, I went to every note conference I could go to, and that has literally built my business. It's just going and attending and talking to people and meeting people, who's selling, who's buying, who are the vendors that I can get in touch with that can help me run this. I'm still living in Canada. Everything I do is in the
Yep.
US, so I need help on the ground, in the right country, people that can help me do whatever I need to do, whether that's an attorney, whether that's a servicing company. I mean, you name it. I need all those guys. So that is how I've built my business, is just by going to conferences, meeting people. So I figure if I can build the business by attending these, then surely running a conference will be that much better. And it has been. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned that about meeting, going to conferences, because again, part of the conversation I had this morning with this individual was he coined the term Zoom exhaustion. And
Yeah.
there's so many meetings and conversations that people have in Zoom people now tend to skip conferences and some of these other things. I
Yeah.
was at a conference back in last month, and it was down in Miami. And there were some people who, again, I've had many conversations with on this, but just getting to meet somebody, shake their hand, have dinner with them, have a drink, or just
Yeah.
talk, sometimes not even business, but outside of business as well, is
Yeah.
so important. That side of things in building your note company is so important. I can't stress enough for people, and again, I'm probably the worst offender where I just want to sit in my basement and just like plug numbers all day. But
I get
I
it.
spent many years trying to build what I've started
Yeah.
by going places and meeting people and having those conversations. And, I'm like you said, that's exactly how you learned as well.
Yeah, and you're totally right. I can't stress it enough. Like it's hard for me to overstate how important it has been to what I'm doing today and continues to be. Every time I go to some note conference, whether it's mine or somebody else's, I learn something.
Yeah,
I meet somebody or something comes up where I'm like, oh, that's cool, or something, and it
yep,
has made all the difference. And so it's like I say, I can't overstate it enough. It's been just absolutely amazing.
yep. So tell us a little bit about, you know, the, I'll say DME, and having ran it, for several years now. Like anything, I'm sure the first year there's things like, I think I could do this a little better, tweak and so forth.
Yeah.
Coming up on this year, what are some of the things you're excited about as part of the conference when that people can expect?
Yeah, this year, I guess the change that we've made is the theme. So the theme of this year is we're leaning into that idea of diversification within notes.
Yep.
There are so many different niches within an already niche industry.
Hmm.
So we've got guys coming to talk about, buying structured settlements, buying tax liens, doing different things within notes that are still notes, but just a different angle on the same kind of idea. So I'm excited about that. I think that's going to be really interesting for people. I hope it doesn't you know, distract people from,
Yeah.
from doing what they want to do. But I just want to open people's eyes. Like, look, there's a lot of different avenues you can take here and maybe add to your already existing business, or maybe you're getting started and you think, you know what, all this looks great. That's the thing I want to focus on and pick a lane.
Yeah, and interestingly, I was on a conversation over the weekend with somebody who somewhat what you just hit upon and talked about, where there's all these other investment strategies out there, but
Mhm.
sometimes you get people, and one of the ones that I think people have really pushed and think is the greatest thing since sliced bread is the whole subject to component.
Yeah,
And somebody was talking about how, oh, like that's the only thing you should be doing, this and that. And a
yeah,
conversation I had as part of this group was, hey, look, to me, that's just another tool in your tool belt. There's
exactly.
certain periods of time where that is a great strategy, or there might be a deal that comes up, but that shouldn't be your only strategy, because you could do other types of seller financing, you could do buying non-performing, you could do tax liens. There's so
Mhm.
many options within this space that it's good to know all of them, but also know the people who are involved, because we
Right,
see so much crazy stuff, and to know, oh, this would be a good deal for this person or that
right.
person. And that's
Yeah,
where these conferences come into play.
yeah,
The one
definitely.
other thing I will say that your conference has far and above, takes the reign of superiority, is you have an axe throwing competition before it. So that, that one's tough to, for anybody, tough to like, challenge. Some I've seen have golf tournaments and stuff, which are
Right.
cool, but you have freaking axe throwing. Tell me a little bit about that. How'd you come up with that?
That was one of my first ideas was
Yep.
like we're taking over the conference and we're gonna do an axe throwing tournament. And I was talking to Dave Putz and he's like, you want to do what? And I'm like, I trust me, man, it's gonna be awesome. You'll see.
Yep.
So the reason is my brother-in-law, my wife's younger brother, he's the one who invented the sport of axe throwing.
Okay.
So if you go back, Matt Wilson's his name. If you want to go back and search, you'll find him, 2006, I think is when it first got started.
Yep.
He's in the Wall Street Journal. He's been on Discovery Channel. He's done all these different
Yep.
things because he's the guy that invented the sport. Now there's tons of different ones out there, but that's my claim to fame. I know the guy that
Yep.
started the whole the whole thing. Um, but having done that, having gone to his locations and throwing an axe, it's a ton of fun. And I think one of the one of the advantages of something like an axe throwing is you've got a couple of people throwing. First of all, nobody's that good at it.
Yep.
So you don't need to
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
intimidated
It's not like
because
you can go practice somewhere or who
no,
practices. Yeah.
most people have not ever done it before, and that's
Yep.
great. So you come and you get together. It's tons of fun. It's very, there's a whole area behind where you're throwing axes where we've got food and just place where you can hang out. So
Yep.
you get to meet people before the conference even starts.
Mhm.
So when you get in there Friday morning, you've already met 10 people that you were hanging out with last night that you've never met before. So right from the get-go, you can start those conversations. You already know and like each other. Now you got to build that trust so you can do some business together. So that's
Yeah.
the whole idea. Get to know people so you can do some business.
So are you throwing it at a target, a servicer, an attorney, or all the of the above is the question that I have. So
You put up the picture of the thing that you are having the most issues with.
so for those in the space, they'll get that little joke of, and again, we love our servicers, we love our attorneys, but they're like your in-laws. They sometimes can drive you nuts. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
but
we need them, we love them, but yeah, you got to make sure you stay on top of things. That's part of the job.
uh, what do you think is, you know, going to be the biggest takeaway this year based off of, the economy? It's very different, I think, than probably it was a year or so ago.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, and again, you've got the theme that you've outlined and stuff. What are some of the like ahas you think people are going to walk away from this in regards to, hearing what's going on in the world?
Yeah. So we also have we've got somebody from MBA coming, Mortgage
Yep.
Bankers Association,
Hmm.
which we've done in the last couple of years, and I find it very helpful.
Hmm.
And as much as they have really great information and some great stats and things like that, I don't necessarily take that as gospel truth because
Yep.
they have their information.
Hmm.
And then we've got somebody like Melody Wright who's coming, and she went through the whole crash last time. And if you haven't seen her on YouTube or Substack
Yep.
or somewhere, you check her out because she's very interesting.
Hmm.
She's going to be there. Other people that have got some larger hedge funds that have a little bit more of a macro view of what's going on and what they're seeing in their own funds so that we can kind of piece together what stats we're bringing plus what people are actually seeing on the ground so that we can maybe see the future a little bit and
Hmm.
get to understand a little bit about what's happening and what might be coming down the pipe so we can prepare for it.
Yeah. One of the things I like to share with investors, especially the ones getting started, is don't worry too much about what's going on with the macro economy. I mean, you want to know housing and some of these things.
Sure.
If you're trying to buy a $50,000 note, you're playing in a $16 trillion industry. You're going to be
Right.
able to find a note.
Yeah.
That's the key is going to be building that team around you. Finding a note is one thing, but then building that team around you who can manage that. And you want to talk a little bit about some of your sponsors and some of the other people that are going to be at the event that people
Yeah.
can network with so they can start building that team.
Yeah, for sure. So before you even get the note, are you using your own money or are you going to use somebody else's? If you're using somebody else's, IRAs are a great place to start. And so we've got a couple of different IRA companies coming where you can get together with them and help understand how you can use other people's money. In that same vein, we've also got lawyers that can help you figure out how to structure so you don't start messing with other people's money and get yourself into all kinds of trouble with government agencies and things all the initials that you don't want to
Yeah.
be associated with. And then you buy that note. First, you got to find that note. So, who are some people that are going to be at the conference that are selling notes? Those are going to be there too.
Yeah.
Servicers that can then walk you through and like actually collect the payments on your behalf, which I highly recommend. Can you do it on your own? Well, debatable, but I would highly recommend, highly, 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 using a servicer. And they're going to be the ones that are going to be taking care of that note for you. You've got attorneys that are going to be there. What happens if they start non-performing? If they stop making payments for some reason, you're going to need an attorney. So they're going to be there as well. And like all the way along, every step of the way, that's who we want to have lined up there. We've got mortgage servicing um, like software, a couple of different companies that are coming to have that. Click to mail, guys that are will help you to find those notes where you can send out postcards, like all kinds of things that are helping you every step along the way to just build your business.
Yeah. And you probably have like an insurance company or somebody,
Insurance.
yep,
Yep.
insurance
Yeah.
preservation companies. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the other thing about these conferences that I'll share as well. And I love, seeing sometimes on like Reddit or some of these places, people always asking, I can't find any off-market deals. I can't find any of this. And the one thing I always tell people is your best friend should be a note investor.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is people listening, go back to how Nate stumbled upon this, how I stumbled upon this. What were we prior? Disgruntled landlords or property owners. So
Yeah.
if we take a property back, the last thing we want to do is hold that property. If we have an
Right.
investor step in and say, I'll buy it from you, and we bought it at a discount, so hopefully, we can still make a decent spread. You're
Yeah.
not going to, could you make more renovating and selling? Absolutely, but that's not what we're in the business mostly to do. So
Right.
I always tell people, just because you're not into notes, that if you're a wholesaler or an investor, these are some of the conferences you should attend. It's like Matt Kelly, I know you know Matt,
Mhm.
always says, here are some of the other conferences note investors should attend. It's no
Mhm.
different for other people, depending on the type of deal you're looking for. Here's what you should be after, because I bet you if you walk the crowd at your conference, I'll ask you, how many people or how many deals you think people have that are in foreclosure or just finished foreclosure that they're sitting on an REO? How many?
Oh, dozens all the
Yeah,
time. Where, yeah, that's exactly right. Even a note investor, like you say, as a note investor, I don't want to own property. So as soon as I take back a property, I'm looking to sell it. I want to get it back out the door because I don't want the property. That's not what I'm about. I want the note. So if
yeah.
I don't have a note anymore, I need to sell it. So if there's somebody there that's a wholesaler, somebody that's a fix and flipper, great. Come talk to me. We'll make a deal.
Yeah. And the truth be told, you typically can get a very good deal on these types of assets
Yeah.
compared to, some of the other deals that you see out there.
Yeah,
So,
and these are all off market.
mhm,
Again, I don't want to deal with a realtor if I don't have to. And no offense to a realtor, but if I can get it done off market, it's just faster and easier and cheaper.
yep. So we've talked about the conference. Can you talk briefly, which we haven't yet, and we'll make sure we also put this at the beginning intro. When is it? Where is it? Give some people
Yeah,
some information about it.
right. That's probably important. Yeah. So it's coming up quick, May 2nd and 3rd in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And get in town earlier on the 1st,
Mhm.
because that night we're going out throwing axes and you want to be part of that because that's a big part of it is just getting out there and networking.
Yep. Yeah. That first night is, the way, a lot of people say things. After that first night, everything else is like, extra credit or bonus material. The
Yeah.
relationships you'll meet, hanging out, probably,
Yeah.
drinking beers, or if you don't drink, whatever, throwing
Yeah.
axes. Actually, I have the website open and I just see Bob Repass sitting there watching a woman throw an axe and stuff and so
Yeah.
forth. And I think it's
Yeah.
some paper stack guys there as well.
Yeah.
And for people listening, you might not know who those people are, but those are people you want to get to know. And it's also an environment. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. We've both been in that fix and flip space and other aspects. The
Yeah.
people in the note investing space are so much nicer and easier to work with and willing to help than the other aspects of real estate. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it's definitely true. Where you walk into any note conference and people are so open and so willing to share and just so friendly versus there's an edge of competition in a lot of the property ones where nobody wants to, really get together with people they don't know, which is completely opposite. In a note conference, you go in, everybody's best friends right away. It's
Yeah.
great.
I think part of it is like you go to some of these conferences, they meet people who are in the same area. So they are fighting for deals and there are less deals sometimes that they're fighting with
Right.
the same. Where in the note space, again, I rarely invest in my backyard and
Yeah.
there's loans. Your profile is probably different than mine. And there's overlap and so forth, but we're
Hmm.
typically seeing so much inventory or enough inventory that
Hmm.
it doesn't matter. And if I win a bid against you or you win a bid against me, it's like, okay, next one. It's not like, oh my God, in houses, people get upset and stuff.
Yeah.
In notes, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
but
Oh, good for
also,
you, man. That's great.
yeah, but also a year later, I'll, call you up and basically, hey, whatever happened with that?
Yeah.
I know fellow Canadian Chad Erbshot.
Yeah.
He's bought some loans from me, and many people have, and I always ask him like, whatever happened with that and stuff. And I had one loan that literally one woman bought from me, and like 3 weeks later it paid off,
Okay.
and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, that stinks and stuff.
Yeah.
But in the same token, I'm like, that's awesome. And the
Yeah.
other reason why it's awesome sometimes is she made really good money. So what's she going to do? She's going to be okay buying from me. It's like buying
Exactly.
at a car dealership. You have a bad experience. You don't want to
Right.
go to that person anymore.
No, exactly. And the guy that I'm buying from today, I might sell to tomorrow.
Yeah.
And because that's just how it goes. And we're constantly circling
Mhm.
around notes and selling them to each other, buying from each other all the time.
Yeah, no, right before this call, I got a call from somebody over at Yanel's office at Crosby Capital, like, hey,
Hmm.
we're interested in this loan. And,
Yeah.
I sold them a loan like in October. I bought one from them in December, and, we just kind of back and forth. And yeah, we compete, but also
Yep.
they're mostly in New York, so they can have New York, I'll give
Right.
them all the New York
Right.
loans they want. But
Yeah. No, and
cool.
it's very much sort of competition, but it's a friendly competition,
Yeah.
and everybody's friends. And like you say, I'll win it this time, you'll win it next time. So
Yeah.
what?
So with that, the one thing I'll mention to people who are new to space and getting involved in stuff is, don't burn your bridges in this space, because it is a
Mhm.
super small space. And some people do that by getting assets under agreement and not closing the deals.
Mhm.
Sometimes just coming up with such a low bid can irritate people. Some
Mhm.
people don't care. I'm at a point in my life where I don't care. It used to bother me, and I basically like get real. But now I'm just like, what, as I get older, I guess. But I think the biggest thing is just do what you're going to say you're going to do. And if there's a reason
Exactly.
why you're not going to close, just have that reasoning or the excuse. The BPO is much lower, or,
Yep.
don't walk away from a deal because there's a $150 tax bill when it's a $20,000 loan with a $100,000 valuation. Like,
Yeah.
that's, you'll be able to work something out in those situations.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly. And that's my philosophy too. Like even if there's like $1,000 tax bill,
mhm,
for me, I'm probably not going to go back to that seller and be like, oh, well, let's knock off $1,000. You know
yeah,
what?
mhm,
Keep the relationship, keep the deal, do
yep,
it. If the whole deal hinges on $1,000, you probably don't want to do that deal in the first place.
yeah.
So just take a small hit this time because you'll make it up next time.
Yeah, and I'll share a quick story before we wrap this up. Of we had, it was only two loans under agreement, and they were a larger firm, and get them under agreement. We get through half a due diligence, and like, oh, we're gonna have to pull one because the borrower is gonna pay it off. I'm like,
Mhm.
cool, but like, I really don't want to go through the hassle of both, so we'll just. In this instance, they were cool with us passing because one of them was like a 200,000, the other one was like 60,000. I'm like, you know, it really, I kind of wanted to get both of them. So they
Yeah.
come back like 3 weeks later and like, okay, you want to do both? The deal, the borrower's not paying off. I'm like, yes. So we go through, we finish due diligence, and we get to the point of, okay, loan sale agreement, literally sent via DocuSign,
Yeah.
not getting signed. 2 days pass, and we're like, what is going on? And they're like, oh, the borrower is going to pay it off, so we're not going to
Yeah.
sell it to you. And later, I'm like, okay. And I'm like, don't even ask me if I'm closing on the other one.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so then they come to me. This was back in like January and February. Then like
Mhm.
2 weeks ago, they come back to me and are like, hey, you still have interest in these two loans? I'm like, no, I'm good. Like,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
it's one of those things where, as a buyer, usually it's you know, the buyers, sometimes the sellers feel it gets spurned by people not closing, but in the
Yeah.
same token, again, it's that reputation of, as a seller, you don't want to be pulling assets from people.
Right.
There's reasons sometimes where, oh, I had one that basically the servicer screwed up on the total payoff, and it was $60,000 higher, and I'm like, hey, look,
That makes
um,
a difference. Yeah.
yeah, it makes a difference, and I apologize and stuff. But I covered their due diligence costs. I gave them their money back, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens, but some of these instances where it's like, oh, I think the situation's changed. You can really get in that gray area. So,
Yeah.
but
No, that's exactly it. It's so much about relationships that yes, take the hit if you need to, just to preserve the relationship, because that is going to make a difference later on.
Yep. So as we wrap up, some final thoughts, about, your company, the conference, as a person sponsoring it, what are you looking to walk away from after the event this year, besides getting a few days rest and, buying your wife a nice dinner for helping you out in all of this?
We're bringing our kids even, so we're going
Oh,
a
there you
couple
go.
days before. We're going to hang out in Memphis for a couple of days, and just because
Okay.
that's fun too. But
Mhm.
no, for me, it's all about the networking. It's all about ideally what I'm looking for is people who are creating notes that are looking to sell them,
Yep.
and not the mom and pops that are doing once in their life.
Mhm.
Ideally, I'm looking for the guy that is buying property at a discount, selling it on terms. They collect their down payment. They can do a first and a second if they want, whatever. But they're creating a note with the intention of selling it to me or somebody
Yep.
like me,
Mhm.
where we can tap into that and just have an ongoing,
Mhm.
revolving door where they can continue to come back to me with other notes that they've created. That's my ideal. That's
Mhm.
definitely something I'm looking for.
Great. Well, Nathan, thanks for joining us today on this episode of the Paper Trail. And people, yes, make sure to check out the DME event. We'll have all the contact information in the show notes as well. So, Nathan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of The Paper Trail. I hope today's insights help you sharpen your note investing strategies. If you found value in this conversation, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow investors. I'm Chris Seveny, reminding you to keep doing the work, trust the process, and always follow the paper trail. Until next time.